Identify different types of missing. Alex Parrish. Identify different types of missing persons. This section explains the legal categories used to describe missing persons. Each category is based on a person's condition, age, and the circumstances of their disappearance. Key vocabulary terms used in this section. Missing person, a person whose location is unknown and for whom there is concern about their safety or well-being. Disability, a physical, mental, intellectual, or developmental condition that limits a person's ability to function or protect themselves. Developmental disability, a disability that begins at birth or during early development and affects learning, behavior, or physical functioning. Acquired disability, a disability that develops after birth, such as from illness or injury. Endangered, a condition where a person is believed to be at risk of serious harm or death. Involuntary a situation, where a person did not choose to leave on their own free will. Voluntary a situation, where a person chose to leave by their own decision. Disaster, a natural or man-made event that causes widespread harm or destruction. Juvenile a person, under the age of adulthood, who is not legally independent. Unemancipated a juvenile, who is still legally under the control and responsibility of a parent or guardian. Emancipated a person, under the age of adulthood, who is legally recognized as independent from their parents or guardians. Missing from care, a person who is missing from a facility or placement responsible for their supervision or care. Exploitation, the act of taking advantage of a person for personal gain, often through abuse or trafficking. Trafficking, the use of force, fraud, or coercion to control a person for labor or sexual exploitation. Missing person with a disability. This category applies when a person has a disability that increases their risk of immediate harm. This includes a person with a mental disability, a person with a physical disability, a person with an intellectual disability, a person with a developmental disability. Important explanations. Some disabilities are congenital, meaning they are present at birth. Some disabilities are acquired, meaning they develop later in life. People with low or no verbal ability may be unable to explain where they are. People with high support needs may not be able to seek help on their own. Why this matters. These conditions increase the risk of injury, exploitation, or death when the person is missing. Endangered missing person. This category applies when a person of any age is missing. The person is believed to be in the company of another person. The actions of that other person place the missing person in danger. Key idea: the danger comes from another person's behavior. Involuntary missing person. This category applies when a person of any age is missing. The circumstances indicate the person did not leave by choice. Key idea: force, control, or coercion is suspected. Voluntarily missing adult. This category applies when the missing person is an adult. The adult left by their own free will. Important clarification. A voluntarily missing person may leave intentionally. The reason for leaving may include the intent to commit suicide. Disaster victim. This category applies when a person of any age is reported missing. The person is assumed to be a victim of a disaster. Types of disasters include natural disasters, man-made disasters, juvenile. This category applies when the missing person is unemancipated. The juvenile does not meet the criteria for disability, endangered, disaster, or involuntary status. Legal note: Texas Family Code Section 31.001 requirements apply. Missing from care. This category applies when a person is missing from a location responsible for their care. 1. Adults missing from hospitals, residential care homes, mental health facilities. 2. Children missing from the physical custody of an agency, an individual, an institution where the child was placed. Important note, the child's actual location may or may not be known. Risk factors. People missing from care are more vulnerable to trafficking. They are also more vulnerable to exploitation, harm, or injury due to neglect, mental health conditions, lack of financial support, lack of emotional support, disability, illness, other category. This category applies when a person does not meet the criteria for any other category. There is a reasonable concern for the person's safety. This category also includes a person under 21 years of age. The person has been legally declared emancipated. Identify circumstances surrounding missing persons. This section explains the different circumstances that can cause a person to become missing. These circumstances increase risk and guide how officers respond. Key vocabulary terms for this section. Abduction. The act of taking or holding a person against their will or without legal authority. Attempt. A significant action taken toward committing a crime, even if the crime is not completed. Runaway. A person under 18 years of age who leaves home or a legal residence without permission. Throwaway youth. A youth who is asked to leave, forced to leave, or given away by caregivers without alternate care arranged. Wandering. When a person who needs supervision leaves a safe place or responsible care, often without recognizing danger. Bolting or fleeing. The sudden act of running away, often triggered by stress, fear, excitement, or sensory overload. At risk or endangered. A person who faces a high likelihood of harm, exploitation, abuse, or neglect. Disaster. An event that causes widespread harm and overwhelms a community's ability to cope using its own resources. Cognitive impairment. A condition that affects memory, judgment, or the ability to understand surroundings. Abductions. Abduction is a major circumstance that leads to missing persons cases. Key facts. Victims of abduction can be any age, including adults. Victims may know the abductor. Victims may not know the abductor. Attempted abductions. An attempted abduction occurs when the crime is not completed. An attempt exists when a person takes a significant step toward committing abduction. The crime does not have to succeed. Family abductions. A family abduction occurs when a child is taken, wrongfully retained or concealed. The act is committed by a parent or other family member. Another person is deprived of lawful custody or visitation rights. Important rules. A child's willingness does not make the abduction legal. The abducting person may have no legal custody or responsibility. Children are far more likely to be abducted by someone they know than by a stranger. Legal reference. Texas Penal Code Section 25.03. Interference with child custody. Non-family abductions. These include abductions by someone known but not related, such as a neighbor, teacher, co-worker, or online acquaintance. Someone completely unknown to the victim. Critical point. Any abduction places a person in grave danger, even when committed by a parent or family member. Runaway youth. A runaway is an individual under 18 years of age who voluntarily leaves home or a legal residence without permission from a parent or legal guardian. This includes children under government care, children in care facilities who leave without permission from custodial authorities. Reasons children run away include escaping a negative family or living environment, experiencing physical abuse, experiencing sexual abuse, experiencing mental or emotional abuse, living with a mental health condition, having a history of substance abuse. Children involved in the child welfare system are more prone to running away, are more likely to experience homelessness. Contributing factors. Disruption in living arrangements after entering care, attempting to avoid foster care, attempting to escape a specific foster placement, experiencing abuse in licensed foster homes or child placement settings, using running away as a coping mechanism for instability or lack of control. Running away to attempt returning home. Important pattern. Once a child runs away for the first time, the likelihood of future runaway incidents increases significantly. Throwaway or giveaway youth. This category applies to youth who are asked to leave by parents or caregivers, youth who are forced to leave, youth who are given away without alternate care arranged. Key risk. Lack of support greatly increases the risk of trafficking and exploitation. Wandering. Wandering occurs when a person who needs supervision leaves a safe place. The person leaves the care of a responsible individual. The person may not recognize dangers. Common dangers include traffic, open water, heights, weather conditions, strangers, types of wandering, goal-directed wandering. This includes wandering towards something of interest, such as water, train tracks, or a park. Sensory-seeking behavior, such as moving toward traffic sounds. Attempting to reach a familiar place, bolting or fleeing. This includes sudden running or bolting, often motivated by stress, excitement, or a desire to escape. Common in people with disabilities, triggered by being startled or overwhelmed. Sensory overload can cause flight behavior. Other wandering causes. Wandering may occur due to disorientation, nighttime wandering, confusion during transitions, mental health crisis, being under the influence of substances, simply becoming lost. Cognitive impairments involved include dementia, Alzheimer's disease, at-risk or endangered persons. This category includes individuals, often children, who face high risk of trafficking, sexual assault, exploitation, abuse, neglect. Circumstances include disappearing while in a dangerous environment, being the victim of a crime or suspected foul play, having medical, mental, or behavioral health needs, having an intellectual or developmental disability, including cognitive impairment, being a child last seen with an adult unknown to the family or legal guardian, displaced by disaster. A disaster is any event causing widespread material, economic, or environmental damage. An event that overwhelms a community's ability to cope. Examples include extreme weather, such as tornadoes, wildfires, and floods. Acts of violence, such as mass shootings. Major sporting events, large music festivals or concerts. Transportation incidents, such as multi-vehicle crashes or train collisions. Disasters can displace large numbers of people quickly. Separate families during evacuations. Evacuation complications. People from schools, workplaces, and homes may be sent to different shelters. Effects of disasters include road closures and damaged transportation routes, building damage, disruption of phone networks, loss of internet services, failure of emergency communications, blocked evacuation routes, insufficient transportation resources. Section 18.3. Identify types of reporting systems. This section explains the information systems used by law enforcement to report, track, share, and resolve missing person cases. These systems allow agencies to exchange information quickly and accurately. Key vocabulary terms for this section. Reporting system. A structured database or network used to collect, store, and share information between law enforcement agencies. Clearinghouse. A central location where information is gathered, organized, and distributed. Repository. A place where information is stored for future access and reference. Computerized index. A searchable digital system used to organize and retrieve records. Confidentiality. Legal protection that limits who can access certain information and how it may be shared. Unidentified body. A deceased person whose identity is unknown. Cross-checking. Comparing records from different sources to find matches or connections. Dementia. A medical condition that affects memory, thinking, and behavior, including Alzheimer's disease. Missing persons. Clearinghouse. The missing persons Clearinghouse is a central state-level system used to manage missing person information. Legal authority. Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Section 63.003. Primary functions. Serves as a central repository of information on missing children, missing persons, attempted child abductions. Communicates with the National Crime Information Center Missing Person File. Exchanges information on missing children and missing persons. Additional duties. Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Section 63.005. Distributes information, including data on unidentified bodies within the state. Cross-checking role. Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Section 63.014. Cross-checks and matches missing person records with unidentified person records. Confidentiality requirement. Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Section 63.017. Certain records are protected and restricted from public access. National Crime Information Center. The National Crime Information Center is a nationwide law enforcement database. Purpose: acts as a computerized index of missing persons. Criminal justice information. Key features: designed for rapid exchange of information. Allows communication between criminal justice agencies across jurisdictions. Shares missing person information with the Missing Persons Clearinghouse. Texas Crime Information Center. The Texas Crime Information Center is a statewide information system. Purpose: provides information on missing persons. Includes additional criminal information relevant to Texas law enforcement. Important connection. The Texas Crime Information Center is directly linked to the National Crime Information Center. Information entered at the state level can be shared nationally. National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. The National Missing and Unidentified Persons System is a national centralized system. Purpose: serves as a repository and resource center for missing persons, unidentified persons, unclaimed persons. Scope: covers cases across the United States. Function: provides tools and investigative resources to law enforcement. Assists in resolving long-term missing person cases. Alzheimer's Association Safe Return Emergency Response Center. This system is a nationwide emergency response service. Purpose: supports individuals living with Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia. Specialization: focuses on wandering incidents. Assists during medical emergencies involving individuals with dementia. Key role: helps law enforcement and caregivers locate and safely return missing individuals affected by cognitive impairment. Big picture for officers. These systems exist to speed up missing person investigations, share accurate information across jurisdictions, prevent duplication of effort, protect sensitive information, increase the likelihood of recovery. Section 18.4. Indicate the types of statewide alerts. This section explains the different statewide emergency alert systems. These alerts are used to quickly involve the public in locating missing or endangered persons. Important vocabulary terms. A statewide alert is an emergency notification sent to the public to help locate a missing or endangered person. Activation means officially turning on an alert system. Criteria are the required conditions that must be met before an alert can be issued. Local activation means an alert is issued in a limited geographic area instead of the entire state. Immediate danger means a person faces a serious risk of injury or death. America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response Alert. This alert is commonly known as an Amber Alert. It is a statewide alert used to assist in locating an abducted child, a missing person with an intellectual disability. In some cases, a local activation may be used instead of a statewide alert. Local activation may occur when the statewide criteria for an Amber Alert have not yet been fully met. Local activation areas may include a location within a 100-mile radius of where the child is believed to have gone missing, the location where the child was last seen, counties adjacent to the county where the child was last seen or believed to have gone missing. Local activation requirements include the full criteria for an Amber Alert has not yet been verified. The chief law enforcement officer of the agency believes activating the alert system is appropriate. Silver Alert. A Silver Alert is a statewide alert used to assist in locating missing senior citizens, persons with Alzheimer's disease. This alert is commonly associated with individuals who may wander or become disoriented. Endangered Missing Persons Alert. This is a statewide alert used to assist in locating missing persons with an intellectual disability. The alert focuses on individuals who are especially vulnerable due to cognitive limitations. CAMO Alert. A CAMO alert is a statewide alert used to assist in locating missing current or former members of the United States Armed Forces. This includes members of the National Guard, members of reserve units, members of auxiliary units of any branch of the armed forces. Clear Alert. A clear alert is a statewide alert used to assist in locating and rescuing missing adults, kidnapped adults, abducted adults. This alert applies when the adult is in immediate danger of injury or death. The alert may also be used to help locate potential suspects. Activation requirements for all alerts. Before any statewide alert is activated, the required criteria must be met. There must be sufficient information to share with the public. This information may include details about the missing person, details about a suspect, details about a vehicle used in the incident. The purpose is to allow the public to assist law enforcement in locating the individual safely and quickly. Section 18.5. Identify how to gather information in a report for a possible alert. This section explains how officers must gather detailed information when preparing a report that may be used to issue a public alert. The goal is to collect clear, accurate, and specific information that can be shared with the public. Important vocabulary terms. A detailed description means clear and specific information that helps identify a person, vehicle, or object. Vivid language means descriptive wording that creates a clear mental picture for the reader or listener. Distinguishing marks are unique features that help tell one person or object apart from others. Exact location means the most precise place known where a person was last seen. A range means an estimated span of time or dates when the exact value is unknown. General information gathering. Officers must obtain detailed descriptions of people, vehicles, and property. Descriptions should be specific, clear, accurate, easy to understand. The information collected must be useful for alert activation and public assistance. Person descriptions. When describing a person, officers should gather the following information: race, sex, and age, height and weight, hair details, including color, texture, and style, head coverings including color and style, facial details, including complexion and face shape, details about the eyes, nose, and mouth, including color and shape, clothing details, including shirt, pants, shoes, and any other clothing, with color and style. Distinguishing marks, such as piercings, tattoos, scars, or physical disfigurements. Any visible injuries, objects the person is carrying. Vehicle descriptions. When describing a vehicle, officers should gather the following information: a full description from top to bottom. Vehicle color, vehicle year, vehicle make, vehicle model, vehicle body style. License plate information, including year of expiration, state where the plate is registered, the full license plate number or any partial number, vehicle identification number, if available, distinguishing features, including damage, bumper stickers, modifications. Other property descriptions. Descriptions of property will vary depending on the type of item. Information should include the manufacturer, the model name or model number, the size, color, and style, the use of the item, if the use is not obvious, date and time information. Officers should attempt to obtain as much detail as possible about dates and times. If the exact date or time is unknown, a reasonable range should be provided. Last known location. Officers must document the exact last known location of the missing person. This information is critical for determining alert eligibility and directing search efforts. Section 18.6. Identify the legal requirements of reporting a missing person. This section explains the legal duties of law enforcement when a missing person is reported. These requirements apply regardless of where the person went missing. Important vocabulary terms. A missing persons report is an official law enforcement document used to record information about a person whose whereabouts are unknown. Jurisdiction refers to the geographic area or legal authority of a law enforcement agency. Regardless means without exception. Entered means officially placed into a law enforcement database. Reporting form refers to the required format used to document a missing person case. Legal reporting requirements. Texas law requires specific actions when a missing person is reported. The Code of Criminal Procedure requires the use of approved report forms for missing person cases. The Code of Criminal Procedure also establishes general enforcement requirements that officers must follow when handling missing person reports. A key legal rule is this: regardless of jurisdiction, law enforcement must take a missing persons report. A missing persons report must be taken even if the person is missing from another city, the person is missing from another county, the person is missing from another state. A missing person is never considered outside of law enforcement jurisdiction for reporting purposes. Database entry requirements. When a missing persons report is made, it must be entered into the National Crime Information Center. Once the report is entered into the National Crime Information Center, the report is automatically sent to the Missing Persons Clearinghouse. If the report is already entered into the National Crime Information Center, there is no need to enter it separately into the Missing Persons Clearinghouse. This automatic reporting ensures information is shared quickly and accurately. Why this matters for officers. These legal requirements exist to ensure no missing person report is refused, prevent delays based on jurisdiction, guarantee statewide and nationwide notification, increase the likelihood of locating missing persons quickly. Section 18.7. Identify the legal requirements of reporting missing children. This section explains the legal duties law enforcement must follow when a missing child is reported. The rules make sure every missing child report is acted on thoroughly and quickly, and that the legal processes are followed. How law enforcement must handle a missing child report. When a report is made that a child is missing, law enforcement must immediately begin trying to find the child. This applies no matter where the child went missing or where the law enforcement agency is located. Officers must start the investigation right away to locate the child. This is required by state law. In the early stages of the investigation, officers must enter all identifying information about the child into the appropriate law enforcement databases within a short period of time. This includes the name of the child and any identifying details that help law enforcement and the public find the child. The available identifying features should include dental records, fingerprints, physical characteristics, a description of the clothing the child was wearing when last seen, and any available information about a person reasonably believed to have taken or retained the child. Law enforcement must also share this information with other law enforcement agencies within a set distance so that the search is coordinated across regions. Officers must inform the person who made the report where the information will be sent. This includes telling them that the child's information will be entered into state and national missing person databases and shared with other law enforcement agencies. The law also requires law enforcement to provide missing child information to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System within a specified time frame to help with long-term case searches. Reporting attempted child abduction. There is also a legal requirement for reporting an attempted child abduction. This law requires that when an officer learns of an attempted abduction, they must report it through official channels in a defined manner. This ensures that law enforcement databases receive accurate information about attempts to abduct children so that patterns and risks can be tracked. Special rules for certain missing children. State law empowers the Department of Public Safety to adopt specific rules for certain missing child cases, such as a child who has been reported missing repeatedly in a short period, a child who is in foster care or under the care of protective services and has multiple missing episodes. These rules require officers to flag those cases as endangered and include extra information about prior missing reports in the database entry. School requirements for missing children. State law also places duties on certain institutions like schools and child care facilities when a child is missing. When officials receive notice that a child under 11 years of age is missing, schools and agencies holding the child's records must maintain those records so they can be accessed if law enforcement or a clearinghouse needs to verify information. When anyone requests a flagged record, those institutions must notify law enforcement without telling the requester that the record relates to a missing child. After notifying law enforcement, the institution can eventually release the records to the requester following the law's requirements. Why this matters for officers. This set of legal requirements ensures that every missing child case is investigated immediately. Information is shared with state and national databases. The public and law enforcement have the best possible information. Long-term tracking and case resolution are supported. Schools and other entities cooperate with law enforcement without compromising investigations. This legal framework provides structure so that missing children receive maximum attention and resources from the moment the report is made. Section 18.8. Identify how to handle false reporting. This section explains what happens when a report about a missing person or missing child is found to be false. It also explains when a report is not considered false. Important vocabulary terms. False report means a report that is untrue and made on purpose, with the intent to mislead. Intent to deceive means the person knew the information was false and wanted to mislead law enforcement. Knowingly means the person was aware of the truth, but still provided false information. Class C misdemeanor is the lowest level of misdemeanor offense in Texas, punishable by a fine but no jail time. The law on false reports about missing persons. Texas law makes it a crime to knowingly file a false report about a missing child or missing person with law enforcement. This means someone cannot intentionally report that a person is missing when they know that is not true. The law also makes it illegal to make a false statement to an officer or other law enforcement employee if the statement relates to a missing child or missing person. In other words, you cannot lie to police when you tell them someone is missing when that person is not missing. You give false information related to a missing person report. The law covers both the actual report and any false statement connected to it. What happens if the report is false? If a false missing person report is discovered, the law enforcement agency that took the report must do two things. First, the agency must clear the report from the law enforcement systems where it was entered. This includes removing it from the National Crime Information Center database if it was entered there. It also includes removing it from the Texas Crime Information Center database. Second, the agency must contact the Missing Persons Clearinghouse to confirm that the false report has been removed and to update their records. These steps make sure that law enforcement databases do not continue to contain false information that wastes resources or misleads other officers. Penalty for making a false report. Under Texas Penal Code, Section 37.081, making a false report of a missing child or missing person is a Class C misdemeanor. This means that if a person is convicted of this offense, they may be fined, but they are not subject to jail time for this specific offense. The fine is typically limited to the amount allowed for a Class C misdemeanor, which is set by Texas law. Reports made in good faith are not criminal. It is important to understand that reports made in good faith are not false reports. Good faith means the person truly believed the individual was missing. The person did not intend to deceive law enforcement. For example, if someone thinks a relative or friend is missing and reports it honestly, that is not a criminal act. Even if the person turns out not to be missing, the report was not made with intent to deceive and is therefore not a false report. Why this matters for officers? False reporting laws exist to discourage people from deliberately misleading law enforcement. They also protect resources and ensure that valuable investigative time is used on legitimate missing person cases. Officers should understand when a report might be false. Verify key facts before treating a report as valid. Follow proper procedures for clearing false reports from law enforcement systems. Section 18.9. Indicate the legal requirements for recovering a missing person. This section explains what officers must do legally after a missing person is found or recovered. This includes clearing records, confirming legal custody, and recognizing victim rights. Important vocabulary terms. Recovering a missing person means locating the person after they were reported missing. Database entry means a record in a law enforcement information system like the National Crime Information Center. Clear a record means to remove, cancel, or close a database entry once it is no longer needed. Custodial guardian means the person who has legal custody and responsibility for a child. Victim of a crime means someone who has suffered harm or loss because of someone else's wrongdoing, and these rights are protected under the law. What law enforcement must do after a missing person is found. When a missing person is found, Texas law requires specific actions by law enforcement. Once a missing person is returned, the law enforcement agency handling the case must immediately clear the record of the missing person from the National Crime Information Center database and similar systems. This ensures that law enforcement databases no longer show the individual as missing, and that agencies across the country are not working from outdated information. After clearing the record in the national system, the agency must also clear the record in the state-level system, such as the Texas Crime Information Center, if the person was entered there. Clearing these entries must happen right away so that the missing person's status is accurately reflected in all reporting systems. Verifying legal custody when returning children. If the person recovered is a child, officers must verify who has legal custody of the child before releasing them. A parent may not always be the legal guardian. Legal custody is determined by court order, guardianship documents, or other legal authority. Officers must confirm that the child is released to the correct custodial guardian. If a parent does not have legal custody, officers should determine who does before turning the child over. This protects the child and ensures compliance with family and criminal law. If the recovered person is a victim of a crime. When the missing person is also a victim of a crime, additional legal protections apply. The rights of crime victims are defined in the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Chapter 56A. This chapter protects victims by ensuring certain rights and services are provided after a crime is reported or discovered. If the recovered person suffered harm because of crime, officers must ensure the person is informed of their legal rights and protections as a victim. These rights include the right to adequate protection from harm, information about the criminal justice process, notification of important court proceedings, the prompt return of property held as evidence. Officers should ensure that victims or their guardians are informed about these rights and how to access services. Follow agency protocols. In addition to following state law, officers must adhere to their department's written procedures for verifying identity, clearing database entries, confirming custodial rights, recording the recovery in official reports. Agency protocols often include additional checklists and forms that must be completed when a missing person is located. Why this matters for officers? These legal requirements ensure Law enforcement systems are accurate. Children are released to the correct legal adult. Victims of crime are given their rights and protections. Officers follow consistent lawful procedures after a person is found. Accurate clearance and verification prevent legal issues and help protect the safety and rights of the recovered person. Section 18.10. Identify possible behaviors of missing persons when encountered. This section explains how a missing person may act or appear when officers encounter them. Officers must understand these behaviors to respond safely and appropriately. Important vocabulary terms. Disoriented means confused about time, place, or surroundings. Cautious means acting carefully due to fear, uncertainty, or lack of trust. Combative means physically or verbally aggressive. Under the influence means affected by alcohol, drugs, or medication. Hypothermic means having a dangerously low body temperature. Hyperthermic means having a dangerously high body temperature. Groomed means emotionally manipulated over time to trust or comply with another person. Possible emotional and behavioral responses. A missing person may show a wide range of emotional or behavioral reactions. They may appear disoriented, tense, cautious, confused, hesitant to respond, combative. These behaviors may result from fear, stress, trauma, exhaustion, or mistrust of authority. Extreme reactions to being found. Some missing persons may have an extreme reaction when they are located. These reactions may include fleeing or attempting to run away, fighting or resisting, hiding or avoiding others, making loud or sudden sounds such as screaming or yelling. These reactions do not automatically indicate criminal intent. They may be survival responses. Physical condition of the person. A missing person may be in poor physical condition when found. They may be malnourished, dehydrated, injured. Under the influence of substances. Hypothermic or hyperthermic, sick or ill. Officers should consider medical needs immediately. Lack of self-identification as a victim. A missing person may not recognize or identify themselves as a victim. This may occur when a child willingly left with a caretaker or family member and does not understand they are missing. A person was groomed and voluntarily left with a perpetrator. A person is unaware they have been reported missing. In these situations, the person may not believe they are in danger or that law enforcement is there to help. Additional factors affecting awareness. Some individuals may wander off, sneak out, or become separated from family or peers, and later be found unharmed. Some individuals may not realize they are missing due to intellectual disability, developmental disability, Alzheimer's disease, other forms of dementia. These conditions can impair awareness and judgment. Loyalty or fear toward the abductor. A victim may lie or attempt to protect the abductor. This behavior may be motivated by fear, emotional attachment, loyalty created through manipulation or coercion. Officers should not assume cooperation or honesty when these factors may be present. Why this matters for officers. Understanding these behaviors helps officers avoid escalating situations, recognize trauma responses, provide appropriate medical care, protect victims who do not see themselves as victims, conduct safe and effective recoveries. A calm, patient, and trauma-informed approach is essential. Section 18.11. Identify best practices for law enforcement personnel when encountering a missing person. This section explains how officers should interact with a missing person once they are located. The focus is on safety, communication, trust, and trauma-informed policing. Important vocabulary terms. Trauma-informed means recognizing that a person's behavior may be influenced by past or current trauma. Advocate means a trained support person who assists victims emotionally and helps them understand services and rights. Nonverbal means communication without spoken words, such as gestures, facial expressions, or typing. Sensory overload means a person is overwhelmed by sounds, lights, movement, or other stimuli. De-escalation means actions taken to reduce fear, stress, or agitation. Trauma-informed approach. Officers should approach a missing person with an understanding that trauma can affect physical health, emotions, behavior, and communication. Trauma may impact physical responses, social interaction, psychological functioning, emotional regulation. This understanding should guide every interaction. Medical and caregiver considerations. If available, officers should look for a medical identification, a caregiver, a responsible support person. This information can help guide appropriate care and communication. Making the person feel safe. Officers should make sure the person feels safe, physically, emotionally, psychologically. When appropriate, a victim advocate should be provided as soon as possible. Approaching someone too quickly may be frightening. Officers should move calmly and intentionally. Steps that help reduce fear include helping the person feel at ease, increasing their sense of security. For children, officers should physically get down to the child's eye level. Supportive actions may include offering food or a drink, unless there are signs of sexual assault. Offering a tissue if the person is crying. Adjusting the approach to meet the person's needs and wishes, allowing the person to feel some control over the interaction. Officers should speak and reassure the person even if they are nonverbal. If the person cannot speak, offer a phone or tablet so they can communicate by typing. Use of time, space, and restraint. If there is no immediate danger, give the person time. Give the person space. Avoid using restraints. A combative response should not automatically be treated as criminal behavior. Possible reasons for combative behavior include communication difficulties, sensory overload, anxiety or fear, difficulty processing instructions, past negative experiences with law enforcement, building trust. Trust is built by being honest, transparent, and consistent. Officers should provide accurate information. Explain what is happening. Prepare the person for what to expect. Avoid sudden or unexpected changes when possible. If an officer does not know an answer, do not lie. Do not make promises. Be honest. Memory and trauma effects. People who have experienced trauma may struggle to remember details. They may have difficulty recalling dates, times, locations, names. A person may provide information that seems contradictory, give details that do not follow a logical timeline, remember experiences only through sensory details. These behaviors do not mean the person is lying. Officers should understand they may be seeing a trauma response. De-escalation using talk tactics. Talk tactics are designed to help calm individuals, especially those with dementia, but they can be applied to most missing persons. Officers should slow down, be patient, remain calm, speak in a normal tone. Questions should be simple, direct, literal. Officers should avoid multi-part questions, allow extra time for responses. Avoid rephrasing the same question repeatedly. Ask the question the same way if repetition is needed. Reality checks should be limited. Officers should avoid correcting the person. Redirect gently when necessary. Make connections to familiar events, people, places, or times. Nonverbal communication. Officers should maintain appropriate eye contact. Use calm body language. Be aware of posture, tone, and facial expressions. Nonverbal communication can be as important as spoken words. Positive outcomes. Knowing how to adjust behavior and communication when encountering a missing person increases the likelihood of safety, cooperation, trust, a positive outcome for everyone involved. Section 18.12. Identify best practices for law enforcement when reunifying missing or separated persons during a disaster. This section explains how law enforcement should assist with reuniting people who become separated during a disaster. The goal is to safely reconnect individuals with family or friends while minimizing further harm or separation. Important vocabulary terms. Reunification means helping displaced disaster survivors voluntarily reestablish contact with family or friends after being separated. Displaced means forced to leave a normal place of residence due to a disaster. Mass evacuation means the large-scale movement of people away from dangerous areas. Primary shelter means the main location where displaced people are housed during a disaster. Reunification overview. Reunification is the process of assisting disaster survivors in reconnecting with loved ones after separation. Law enforcement plays a key role by providing safety, coordinating information, preventing further separation, protecting vulnerable individuals. Challenges that affect reunification. The size and scale of a disaster can significantly impact reunification efforts. A larger affected area usually means more displaced people, greater difficulty tracking individuals, slower reunification timelines. Mass evacuation of residential areas increases the likelihood of separation, especially in densely populated communities. Schools, universities, and hospitals may be affected during disasters. This can lead to primary shelters becoming unavailable, limited backup shelter options, slowed or halted medical care if hospitals are impacted. The timing of the disaster also affects reunification. Complications increase when a disaster occurs, during a school day, during a workday, during weekends or holidays, during large public events such as concerts or sporting events. Resource limitations. Local resources may be spread thin during disasters. Law enforcement may be deployed across large affected areas, have limited ability to focus on reunification due to life safety priorities. If no established reunification process exists, vulnerable individuals may be placed at greater risk. Individuals without background checks may come into contact with those needing care. People may become lost again or separated further. Transportation barriers. Loss of access to transportation creates additional challenges. This includes disruptions to public transportation, lack of access to personal vehicles. Transportation issues can delay or prevent reunification altogether. Age and language barriers. Age and communication ability can complicate reunification. Challenges include children, elderly individuals, people with limited English proficiency, people who are deaf or hard of hearing, pre-verbal or nonverbal individuals, individuals with special needs. When available, language lines should be used, interpreters should be used, communication accommodation should be provided. Complications from the disaster itself. The disaster may still be ongoing. Some individuals may require immediate rescue, need urgent medical attention. These life-saving priorities can delay reunification efforts. Disaster response planning. A disaster response plan should be in place for preparation, immediate response, recovery. Law enforcement should be familiar with their agency's disaster response plan, their role in reunification efforts, how to care for unaccompanied minors, how to assist individuals requiring care. Proper planning helps reduce confusion and improves outcomes during reunification. Why this matters for officers. Effective reunification practices. Reduce trauma. Prevent further separation. Protect vulnerable people. Improve community trust. Support recovery after disasters. Understanding these challenges allows officers to respond safely, patiently, and effectively during disaster situations. Section 18.13. Identify types of exploitation. This section explains what exploitation means under the law and describes the main forms it can take. Exploitation involves using another person in an illegal, improper, or harmful way for personal benefit, profit, or gain. Important vocabulary terms. Exploitation is the illegal or improper use of a child, an elderly person, a disabled individual, the resources of these individuals for personal benefit, profit or advantage. A child is a person under 18 years of age. An elderly person is typically someone 65 or older, especially when vulnerable due to age or health. A disabled individual has a physical, mental, intellectual, or developmental condition that limits functioning or communication. Coercion means using pressure, threats, or force to make someone do something against their will. Extortion means obtaining something through threats or intimidation. What exploitation is? Exploitation includes taking advantage of a person's vulnerability, power imbalance, or trust for personal or financial gain. It may involve emotional, physical, financial, or sexual harm. Sexual exploitation. Sexual exploitation involves abusing a person's vulnerability, power, or trust for sexual purposes. This includes forcing or attempting to force someone into sexual activity, profiting from someone else's sexual performance, benefiting socially or politically from sexual exploitation. Under Texas law, several offenses relate to sexual exploitation. The Penal Code makes it a crime for anyone to employ, authorize, or supervise activities that involve a child in sexual conduct for the purpose of making a performance or show. This is described in Texas Penal Code Section 43.25. It is illegal to use a child in a sexual performance, whether filmed, photographed, or live, and there is no defense based on consent. The Penal Code also makes it illegal to employ or use children in activities that are harmful to their morals or welfare. This is found in Texas Penal Code Section 43.251. It is unlawful to hire or use children in activities that are harmful to minors, such as exposing them to sexual content or harmful labor. Sexual abuse more generally includes actual or threatened physical intrusion, with force or coercion. Without the victim's consent, these acts are also criminal under various sections of the Penal Code. Labor exploitation. Labor exploitation occurs when people are abused or deprived of fair treatment in the workplace for profit or gain. This may include forcing individuals to work under unsafe conditions, withholding pay, or otherwise exploiting workers because of their vulnerability. Labor exploitation is often associated with human trafficking and illegal labor practices. Financial exploitation. Financial exploitation means the wrongful or unauthorized taking, withholding, or use of a person's money, a person's assets, a person's property, a person's identifying information. This type of exploitation is most often found in cases involving elderly adults, adults with disabilities. Financial exploitation includes stealing money from a vulnerable adult, using their credit cards without permission, or accessing their resources without authorization. Texas law defines exploitation of an elderly or disabled person in the Texas Finance Code Section 281.001, which includes taking advantage of a vulnerable adult for financial benefit. Online exploitation, coercion, and extortion. Online exploitation involves the use of digital technology to coerce, threaten, share, or distribute sexual images or information for the purpose of abuse, intimidation, financial gain, or sexual exploitation. Common goals of online exploitation include causing distress or harm to the victim, gaining financially through threats or extortion, using the victim's images or information to exploit them. Motivations can also include seeking malicious notoriety or attention on social media. Several Texas Penal Code sections address these behaviors. Texas Penal Code Section 33.021 makes online solicitation of a minor a crime. This means it is unlawful to use electronic communications to lure, solicit, or persuade a child to engage in sexual activities. Texas Penal Code Section 21.18 addresses sexual coercion, including threatening to share sexual images to compel sexual conduct. This statute makes it illegal to threaten to expose private sexual materials in order to influence someone's behavior. Online exploitation is treated seriously by law enforcement because it can involve children, vulnerable adults, and emotional or financial harm to victims. Why this matters for officers. Understanding the different types of exploitation helps officers recognize when exploitation may be occurring, identify vulnerable victims, take appropriate investigative action, report cases accurately, coordinate with victim services and prosecutors. Exploitation is not limited to one form or setting. It can occur through physical contact, labor practices, financial control, or online coercion. Recognizing the signs of exploitation protects victims and supports criminal investigation. Section 18.14. Identify types of human trafficking. This section explains what human trafficking is under Texas law and describes the main types of trafficking officers may encounter. Human trafficking is a serious crime involving forced exploitation of another person. Important vocabulary terms. Human trafficking means the act of transporting, recruiting, enticing, harboring, providing, or obtaining another person by any means for exploitation. Exploit means to take advantage of another person for labor, services, or sexual purposes. Coercion means forcing someone to act through threats, pressure, intimidation, or abuse of power. Involuntary means the person does not freely choose the situation. Labor or services includes work or activities performed for the benefit of another person. Debt bondage means forcing someone to work to repay a debt, real or claimed, that they cannot realistically pay off. What human trafficking is. Human trafficking involves forcing or controlling a person for exploitation. Trafficking is involuntary. Involves forced exploitation, can occur anywhere, including inside a home. Does not require movement across borders, can happen within the same city or residence. A person can be trafficked even if they never leave their home. Texas law on trafficking of persons. Texas Penal Code, Section 20. .02 defines the offense of trafficking of persons. Under Texas law, a person commits trafficking if they knowingly transport, recruit, entice, harbor, provide, obtain another person with the intent to force that person into labor or services and receive a benefit from that labor or service. The law also covers trafficking for sexual exploitation. Consent by the victim is not a defense when force, fraud, or coercion is used. When the victim is a child, proof of force or coercion is not required. Sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is a form of human trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation. It involves forcing, manipulating, or controlling a person to engage in sexual acts for the benefit of another. Important distinctions. Prostitution can become trafficking. Trafficking must not be considered prostitution. A sex trafficking victim is a rape victim. Sex trafficking often involves threats, violence, manipulation, control of money, control of movement. Child trafficking. Child trafficking involves children who are recruited, transported, transferred, harbored, received, for the purpose of exploitation. Under the law, children cannot legally consent to trafficking. Force, fraud, or coercion does not have to be proven. Any exploitation of a child for labor or sex qualifies as trafficking. Labor trafficking. Labor trafficking involves forcing a person to work or provide services. This may include force, fraud, coercion. Labor trafficking is used to subject individuals to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, slavery-like conditions. Labor trafficking is considered the least recognized form of trafficking, but it is the most widely used. Bonded or debt labor. Bonded or debt labor occurs when a victim's labor is used as repayment for a debt. The debt may be real or fabricated. The debt is structured so it can never realistically be paid off. The victim remains trapped through financial control. Forced labor or services. Forced labor occurs when a person is forced to work against their will. Threats of violence or punishment are used. Forced labor can include domestic servitude, agricultural labor, sweatshop or factory labor, janitorial work, food service work, service industry labor, begging. Victims are often isolated, controlled, and afraid to seek help. Why this matters for officers. Human trafficking cases may not look obvious. Victims may appear compliant, fear law enforcement, defend their trafficker, not identify as victims. Understanding the types of trafficking helps officers recognize indicators, protect victims, separate trafficking from consensual activity, apply the correct criminal charges, coordinate victim services. Human trafficking is about control and exploitation, not choice. Section 18.15. Identify high-risk populations. This section explains which groups of people are at higher risk of being exploited. While anyone can be exploited, some individuals are more vulnerable due to life circumstances, age, health, or social barriers. Important vocabulary terms. High risk means having a greater likelihood of being targeted for exploitation. Vulnerable means more easily harmed, manipulated, or controlled. Susceptible means more likely to be taken advantage of due to limited resources, support, or protection. Exploitation means taking advantage of a person for personal benefit, profit, or gain. General principle: anyone can be exploited. However, certain populations face higher risk because they may lack protection or supervision, lack stable housing or income, lack legal or social support, have difficulty communicating or seeking help, be dependent on others for care or resources. Children as a high-risk population. Children are especially vulnerable to exploitation. This includes children in foster care, children involved in the juvenile justice system, runaway children, unaccompanied minors. These children may lack stable supervision, consistent caregivers, or safe housing. Elderly adults. Elderly adults are at higher risk due to physical decline, cognitive impairment, dependence on caregivers, social isolation. These factors make them more vulnerable to financial, physical, and emotional exploitation. Disabled individuals. Disabled individuals may face physical limitations, intellectual or developmental disabilities, communication barriers, dependence on others for daily care. These factors can increase vulnerability to abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Non-citizens and undocumented persons. Non-citizens and undocumented persons may be at higher risk because they may fear law enforcement, lack legal protections, be unfamiliar with local laws or services, be threatened with deportation by exploiters. This fear can prevent them from reporting abuse or seeking help. Language and cultural barriers. Individuals with language or cultural barriers may have difficulty understanding their rights, be unable to communicate effectively with authorities, rely heavily on others for interpretation or assistance. This reliance can be exploited by offenders. Substance use disorders. Individuals battling substance abuse may be dependent on others for access to substances, make risky decisions due to addiction, be manipulated in exchange for drugs, alcohol, or money. These factors increase exploitation risk. Lack of access to housing. Individuals without stable housing may rely on strangers for shelter, accept unsafe conditions to survive, be coerced into labor or sex in exchange for basic needs. Housing instability is a major risk factor for exploitation. LGBTQ plus individuals. LGBTQ plus individuals may face family rejection, social isolation, discrimination, higher rates of homelessness. These factors increase vulnerability, especially among youth. People of color. People of color may experience systemic inequalities, economic disadvantage, reduced access to resources, historical mistrust of systems. These conditions can increase exposure to exploitation and reduce access to help. Why this matters for officers. Understanding high-risk populations helps officers recognize vulnerability, Identify potential victims. Apply trauma-informed approaches. Connect individuals to resources. Prevent exploitation before it escalates. Exploitation often targets vulnerability, not weakness. Section 18.16. Define interdiction. This section explains what interdiction means and how it applies to human exploitation and trafficking cases. Important vocabulary terms. Interdiction means the act of stopping, intercepting, or preventing the movement of a prohibited person or prohibited activity. Prohibited commodity means an illegal item, service, or activity that is not allowed by law. Human exploitation means taking advantage of a person for labor, services, or sexual purposes. Human trafficking means the forced exploitation of a person through control, coercion, or abuse of power. What interdiction is? Interdiction is the act of intercepting and preventing the movement of a prohibited person or prohibited activity. This can involve stopping a person, a vehicle, a transaction, an activity, before further harm occurs. Interdiction in human exploitation and trafficking. Interdiction in human exploitation and trafficking is similar to drug interdiction. The focus is not only on what is visible. Officers must recognize warning signs, look beyond surface-level explanations, identify behavior that does not match the situation. Interdiction requires officers to see past what is being presented, identify inconsistencies, detect control, fear, or coercion. Practical application. In exploitation and trafficking cases, victims may not identify as victims. Situations may appear voluntary. Control may be subtle rather than obvious. Interdiction involves recognizing these hidden indicators and intervening before exploitation continues. Why this matters for officers. Effective interdiction prevents ongoing exploitation, protects vulnerable individuals, interrupts trafficking operations, allows early intervention before harm escalates. Interdiction is about awareness, observation, and action. Section 18.17. Identify signs of human trafficking and exploitation. This section explains common indicators of human trafficking and exploitation. No single sign confirms trafficking on its own. Officers must look at the totality of circumstances. Important vocabulary terms. Restricted communication means a person is limited or controlled in how they speak, who they speak to, or what they are allowed to say. Scripted responses are answers that appear rehearsed or coached, rather than natural. Submissive means overly compliant or passive due to fear or control. Branding means tattoos or markings used to claim ownership or control over a person. Power disparity means one person clearly has control, authority, or dominance over another. Regression means reverting to childlike behaviors as a response to stress or trauma. General signs of trafficking and exploitation. A person may appear to be monitored or watched by another individual while talking or interacting with others. Their answers may sound scripted, rehearsed, or inconsistent. A third party may insist on translating or speaking for them. There may be visible signs of physical abuse. The person may appear submissive, fearful, or overly anxious. They may not be free to come and go as they please, and are often escorted. They may not know their own address. They may show fear, anxiety, hostility, or avoid eye contact. They may display signs of age regression, such as thumb-sucking, rocking, or baby-like speech. Their identification or personal documents may be concealed or controlled by another person. One individual may possess the identification of another. The identification may be kept in a location away from the person's direct control. The person's story may contain inconsistencies. They may not know where they are or where they are going. There may be unexplained travel, especially with inadequate resources or no clear reason. They may have tattoos or markings that indicate branding or ownership. They may possess resources that exceed their apparent means without explanation. A person under 18 cannot legally rent a hotel room, rent a car, open a bank account, enter into a contract. This inability may also apply to some adults due to disability or dependency. Signs, specific to sex trafficking and sexual exploitation. Physical indicators. The person may possess large amounts of money without a legitimate source of income. They may carry condoms or lubricant purchased in bulk. They may have multiple hotel room keys. They may possess sex toys. They may carry mouthwash. They may have multiple cell phones. They may possess refillable gift cards. Verbal indicators. They may frequently use sexual terms. They may use prostitution-related language or street slang. They may defer questions or decisions to an older romantic partner. Behavioral indicators. They may be isolated from family and friends. They may have frequent runaway incidents or repeated truancy. Signs of labor, trafficking, and exploitation. The person may not have identifying documents in their possession. A manager or supervisor may refuse to allow the person to speak separately or in private. There may be clear indications of a power imbalance. One person may speak for the others. One person may appear well-groomed and properly dressed while others are not. There may be a noticeable disparity in the amount or condition of baggage. Indicators of continuous travel or movement. Items that may indicate frequent or continuous travel include baggage, receipts, trash, fast food containers, any other sign of ongoing movement. Cultural considerations. Conduct and body language must always be interpreted within the appropriate cultural context. Some behaviors may be cultural rather than indicators of exploitation. Officers must balance awareness with careful observation. Why this matters for officers. Trafficking and exploitation are often hidden crimes. Victims may appear compliant, fear law enforcement, protect their trafficker, not recognize themselves as victims. Recognizing these signs helps officers identify victims, interrupt exploitation, apply interdiction techniques, protect vulnerable individuals, take appropriate investigative action. Trafficking is about control, not consent. Section 18.18. Identify how to interdict. This section explains how law enforcement should intervene when there are indicators of exploitation, abuse, or trafficking. Interdiction focuses on recognizing hidden harm and taking lawful steps to stop it. Important vocabulary terms. Interdict means to interrupt, stop, or intervene in harmful activity. Victim-forward reporting means a victim voluntarily asking for help. Probable cause means sufficient facts and circumstances to believe a crime has occurred. Consensual contact means a voluntary interaction where a person is free to leave. Suspicious activity means behavior that may indicate criminal activity, but requires further evaluation. Documentation means recording observations, statements, timelines, and evidence in a detailed and accurate manner. Understanding the need for interdiction. Law enforcement cannot always expect victims to come forward and ask for help. Victims may be afraid, be controlled by another person, not recognize themselves as victims, fear consequences for speaking out. Peace officers must be willing to take the next step and recognize when to expand an investigation beyond the initial reason for contact. Interdiction requires awareness and the ability to see beyond what is immediately presented. Children and mandatory interdiction. Interdiction is required whenever a child is involved in a runaway situation, a prostitution-related situation. In any situation involving a child under 18 years of age, a peace officer must notify the Department of Family and Protective Services if there is reason to believe the child is subject to abuse or neglect. This includes emotional abuse. Paying attention to warning signs. Officers must pay close attention to any indicators of exploitation, abuse, trafficking. These indicators may appear subtle and may require follow-up questions, observation, and investigation. Checking databases and systems. Officers should check whether individuals, especially children, appear in missing person systems. This includes checking the National Crime Information Center, the Texas Crime Information Center, the Department of Family and Protective Services Impact Check when applicable, These checks help identify prior reports, patterns, or known risk factors. Following agency protocol. If there is suspicion of trafficking, abuse, or exploitation, officers must follow agency protocol. Officers must contact the appropriate unit or personnel as directed by policy. This ensures proper handling and coordination with specialized resources. Importance of documentation. Documentation is critical to holding offenders accountable in the criminal justice system. Officers must clearly articulate observations, statements, circumstances, conditions, reasons for the stop or contact. This articulation should occur verbally when safe and appropriate, such as on body camera or dash camera, in written reports. Documenting legal basis and timelines. Officers must document whether the contact was consensual, based on reasonable suspicion, based on probable cause. Timelines are especially important and should include time of stop, time consent was given to search, time of custody, time Miranda warnings were given, time of contact with parents or guardians, time database checks were completed. Documenting conditions and observations. Officers should document conditions surrounding the victim and the situation. This includes what was observed in a vehicle and why it was concerning. Clothing worn by the victim's attitude toward the suspect, the victim's demeanor, such as upset, confused, flat, emotionless, angry, or withdrawn. Describing demeanor is important because it may later become relevant in court and may fall under hearsay exceptions. Officers should also document elements of suspected offenses, the statute involved, how the facts meet the elements of the crime. This information should be included in the probable cause affidavit and offense report, using more than video. Officers should not rely solely on video recordings. They should take written notes, take photographs, capture still images when necessary. Officers should not assume audio will be clear. Video footage will capture all details. Still images from video will be sufficient. Independent documentation strengthens the case. Suspicious activity reporting. Even if no immediate intervention occurs, suspicious activity should still be reported. A report should be initiated, citing observed circumstances, red flags, concerning behavior. The Texas Suspicious Activity Reporting Network is a statewide system used to collect and analyze suspicious activity related to terrorism or criminal behavior in Texas. The iWatch Texas reporting system is a community reporting tool available to both commissioned and non-commissioned individuals. Reports may include written information, images, videos, why this matters for officers, effective interdiction, protects victims who cannot ask for help, stops ongoing exploitation, preserves evidence, strengthens criminal cases, improves victim safety and outcomes. Interdiction is not about rushing to arrest. It is about awareness, lawful action, and thorough documentation. Section 18.19. Indicate the best practices of a trauma-informed approach to exploitation victims. This section explains how law enforcement should interact with victims of exploitation using a trauma-informed approach. The focus is on safety, trust, understanding trauma responses, and empowering the victim. Important vocabulary terms. Trauma means a deeply distressing or disturbing experience that can affect a person's thoughts, emotions, and behavior. Post-traumatic stress disorder means a condition that can develop after repeated or severe trauma and may include fear, anxiety, hypervigilance, or emotional numbness. Trauma response means a person's reaction to trauma, which may appear defensive, emotional, withdrawn, or aggressive. Victimization means being harmed, exploited, or abused by another person. Bias means a personal belief or assumption that may affect judgment. Re-traumatization means causing additional emotional harm by repeating or triggering past trauma. Understanding trauma in exploitation. Victims. Trafficking and exploitation can cause long-lasting and severe harm. Many victims experience repeated traumatic events over time. As a result, victims often have a history of trauma. Victims may experience high levels of post-traumatic stress. These effects influence how victims behave, communicate, and respond to law enforcement. Victims may not identify as victims. Victims may not see themselves as victims. They may not want help, not trust law enforcement, not know they need help. Victims may display behaviors that look criminal rather than victim-like. They may appear combative, belligerent, resistant, uncooperative. These behaviors may actually be a cry for help, a trauma response, the result of fear or control. Abusers may threaten the victim's family or friends if the victim cooperates with police. Many victims do not believe law enforcement will protect them or save them. Checking personal biases. Officers must be aware of their own personal biases. Officers should avoid making assumptions. Recognize that signs of victimization vary. Some victims may show outward physical or emotional signs of trauma. Other victims may show dramatic changes in daily functioning, withdrawal, flat or emotionless behavior. There is no single correct way for a victim to act. Ensuring the safety of the victim. Safety must be the top priority. Traffickers often withhold basic needs to control victims. Providing necessities can reduce stress and help establish safety. This may include food, beverages, unless there are signs of sexual assault, blankets, or warmth. Officers should express empathy and validate the victim's emotions. This helps the victim feel supported and heard. When appropriate, allow victims to use self-soothing behaviors. Examples include drawing or coloring, listening to music, smoking a cigarette if allowed. Safe and private communication. When possible, conversations and interviews should occur in a place that feels safe and private. Officers should always separate involved parties. This reduces fear, prevents intimidation, allows the victim to speak freely. The victim should be out of hearing range of others, out of sight of potential abusers. If a caregiver is not the abuser, they may help by reassuring the victim that it is safe to talk. Trust, transparency, and communication. Trust is often damaged due to manipulation, coercion, and abuse. Officers should be honest at all times. Avoid lying or guessing. Say when they do not know an answer. Open-ended questions should be used. These allow more detailed responses. The victim to share at their own pace. Rapid-fire questioning should be avoided. It can overwhelm the victim, cause confusion. Shut down communication. Victims should be encouraged to speak openly without judgment. Officers should listen carefully, validate experiences, avoid arguing about truthfulness. Even if the officer doubts accuracy, listening builds trust. Support and empowerment. Victims should be connected to peer support and victim assistance services whenever possible. Officers should help victims understand what is happening, what options are available, what choices they have. Victims should be supported in making informed decisions about participation in investigations. Empowerment includes giving the victim a sense of control, respecting their choices, allowing them a voice in treatment and services. Language matters. Officers should avoid stigmatizing or judgmental language. Use language that reflects the victim's experience. Examples include saying, victim of trafficking, or victim of exploitation. Careful language helps create a supportive environment where victims can speak without shame or fear. Preparing the victim for what to expect. Victims should be prepared for what will happen next. Officers should explain the process. Avoid unexpected changes when possible. Clear communication helps reduce fear and prevent re-traumatization. Cultural, historical, and gender considerations. A victim's experience of trauma is influenced by culture, history, gender identity. Officers should recognize and respect these factors. Understanding these influences improves communication and supports healing. Why this matters for officers. A trauma-informed approach builds trust, reduces resistance, protects victims, improves cooperation, leads to better long-term outcomes. Trauma-informed policing is not about being passive. It is about being effective, respectful, and human. Section 18.20. Recall victim rights. This section explains the rights of victims and the responsibilities of law enforcement when interacting with them. The goal is to protect victims, avoid further harm, and connect them with appropriate support. Important vocabulary terms. Victim services means programs and organizations that provide support, resources, and assistance to victims. Victim advocate means a trained individual who supports victims emotionally, helps them understand their rights, and acts as a liaison with law enforcement. Legal representation means having an attorney present to protect a person's legal rights. Ad litem attorney means a court-appointed attorney assigned to represent the best interests of a child. Victim compensation means financial assistance available to some victims to help cover costs related to the crime. Expungement means the legal removal of records related to an arrest or charge. Working with victim services and advocates. Law enforcement should work closely with victim services or a victim advocate whenever possible. Victim services and advocates can provide emotional support, offer resources, give guidance, help victims navigate the system. They also serve as a bridge between victims and law enforcement. Officers should be familiar with the victim services available in their area. Some form of victim services is always available. Officers should ensure victims receive case management through a crisis center or child advocacy center. Connect victims with resources that apply to their situation and eligibility. Knowing these resources improves victim outcomes and builds trust. Protecting victims from self-incrimination. Officers should not interview a victim in a way that causes them to incriminate themselves. This is especially important if the victim does not yet have legal representation. Juveniles are entitled to additional protections. Juveniles will have an ad litem attorney appointed to represent their interests. Victims with warrants or criminal history. Some victims may have an active warrant, have committed a crime. Even in these situations, they still have the rights of a victim. They may not be eligible for victim compensation, but their victim rights still apply. Officers should check agency protocols to determine whether delaying execution of a warrant is possible to avoid rearresting or further traumatizing the victim. Impact of arresting victims. Arresting a victim can worsen their mistrust of law enforcement. Once an arrest occurs, dismissal of charges can be difficult. Vacating charges can be difficult. Expungement may be difficult or impossible. Arrests will appear on the National Crime Information Center report. If an arrest is necessary, officers should check agency protocols to see if someone can speak with a prosecutor. The situation can be explained. Charges can potentially be reduced or dropped. These steps may help limit harm to the victim. Why this matters for officers. Understanding victim rights helps officers avoid re-traumatizing victims, build trust and cooperation, protect legal rights, improve case outcomes, strengthen community relationships. Advocating for victims is a critical part of professional policing.